Two Tone is not making a comeback. Well, at least I don't think it's making a comeback. Rolex Two Tone, on the other hand, now that's a completely different concept, and that is probably making a comeback. So back in the 70s, late 70s, 80s, Two Tone was the trend. But then again, it's quite obvious that I know nothing about the 70s or 80s, so scrap that. Anyhow, the main idea that I'm trying to convey is that Two Tone is a fashion aesthetic, and it was very in back in the day. And of course, fashion is very cyclical, so Two Tone can make a comeback, and it's been a while, but I don't think that's what's happening. I think it's the fact that it's Two Tone Rolex, and that's a completely different fact to the actual fashion trend of Two Tone. I don't really think people like Two Tone all that much today as well, and I don't think it's going to make a comeback for that reason. But the thing is, you'll still buy Two Tone Rolex because that's what they give you, and Rolex has come to that state where you pretty much accept anything they give you. And as a brand, from a brand perspective, for Rolex it makes so much more sense to push and peddle a lot more gold pieces because the margins are better on that. And of course, gold, it's a lot more expensive in general, so there's that perceived value on the user's end thinking they're buying a gold watch, but I think the margins are still a little bit fatter on the gold watches. Therefore, they've really restricted the steel pieces, and I think they're going to continue to do that, and they're going to just trickle down gold into almost everything you can imagine. I mean, a Two Tone Explorer, that's the weirdest thing to have in Two Tone, but now we do have that, and a lot of people like it. I don't know if people like it just because Rolex introduced it, or whether that aesthetic is something that people want. And I really don't think Two Tone is something that the vast majority of the watch community is pining for. I think it's just Rolex that everyone wants, and regardless of what they give you, most people are going to take whatever they provide. So I think that's the reason why Two Tone is sort of making a comeback, but not in its literal sense. Two Tone Rolex, I think that's better. Two Tone Rolex is making a comeback, not Two Tone watches. Now, one thing I'm not the biggest fan of is putting gold in sports watches. Well, making the entire watch gold, I don't know why, but I kind of like that, and I suspect a lot of you guys do like it as well. But in terms of making the center links gold and certain accents on it, for example like the new Two Tone Explorer, the 36mm one, I really don't like that watch, and I don't understand that aesthetic. Maybe it's yet to catch on even for me, and perhaps you. I'd like to know what you think of that in the comments below. When it comes to the Submariner, I don't know why, but I sort of like the Bluesy. It's like a Submariner, and you know it's a bit more available, and that blue dial is really nice, and the only way to get that blue dial is to go either semi-precious metal, which is Two Tone, half steel, half gold, or go all white gold with the Smurf. So I don't know, maybe it's that, maybe it's the Two Tone aesthetic that I'm getting more used to over time. Now that brings us on to this piece, the Rolex Datejust reference 116233. Now this is a Two Tone Datejust with diamond hour markers. Now I'm not the biggest fan of diamond hour markers, but in terms of execution of Two Tone, I think this is close to perfection, or at least how I see it. I'm not the biggest fan of Two Tone in general, but when Two Tone is done right, I think it looks like this. Now this watch was provided by Watch10, their watch dealer in Hong Kong. There's a link in the description. Now, trying to extrapolate on why I like this use case of Two Tone and not the other ones in the sports models, even though the Datejust is sort of a sports model, I think it's because this is what first comes to mind when you think Two Tone, and I think most people would agree. Two Tone really got its popularity back in the day with these sort of Datejusts, and they've kind of hung on to that. In fact, I think the Datejust is more synonymous with Rolex than even the Submariner, because it's much more easily recognized. Even though it has a reputation of sort of being more of an old man's watch, I think it's still really cool and classy, and moreover, I think it's essentially the best representation Two Tone watches have at the moment. Oh, one more thing. When it comes to the Two Tone Seadweller, yeah, I really don't like that. If any of you guys have one of those or like those, let me know why, because that's pretty intriguing to me, because it makes absolutely no sense. But a lot of these things in the watch world make no sense. But then again, you have to have some reasoning or rationale even in this whole genre of ridiculousness. So I'd like to know what you think. Do you think two-tone is a nice aesthetic? Are you looking at more two-tone pieces, like Adrian mentioned in his video, where he says that his Instagram is beckoning towards him with a lot of two-tone shots? Do you feel the same way? Because I don't really feel that way. But anyway, point of the matter is, do you think two-tone is worthy of a comeback? And what's your opinion? Do you find it nice to have that accent of gold alongside steel? Or would you rather just have an all steel watch or an all gold watch? Because that's kind of how I feel. I feel that if you're going gold, you kind of go all in. And if you're going steel, well, you go steel. I think I should make more outdoor videos. I don't generally like doing this because it feels awkward and there's people around, and right now, as you can tell, it's cold. But let me know whether you like this style. Of course, this is very much inspired by Adrian from Bark and Jack, if you didn't already tell this entire video. That's pretty much it for this video. I want to hear your thoughts. Put it in the comments below. I really want to get the conversation started about whether it's two-tone Rolex or it's just two-tone as a fashion trend that's coming back. Cheers.